over. Webinar is now broadcasting, so attendees should be coming in we're in a waiting room. So we will give this, hey everybody, we're just going to give this about 30 seconds as everyone is added into the webinar. Thank you everyone. I am just totally, I don't know if I'm shocked, I'm humbled, I'm what, about just the amount of, in 5 days, people who said, hey, I want to be part of this and have this conversation and join the conversation. So that's pretty awesome. And I'm about to have a cat walk in front of me. So that's the ultimate work from home. I guess that has to be a cameo, right? So as we're going, all right, we're still seeing the participants go. So here we go. We over 200 and some registrants with over 85% of them in higher ed, which means we're going to probably see a lot of people come and go because we're all running around like in a madhouse trying to figure out what to do. So thank you, everyone. My name is Joe Way, and I am the Director of Learning Environments at the University of Southern California, and one of the steering committee members for the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. We're on shutdown. We are all working remotely. Students are working remotely. I'm going to kind of go around the horn here and just have everyone. First, we'll start with our steering committee members to kind of introduce themselves, and then we'll go over some basic ground rules of kind of what we're doing. And I just touched my face. Raul, you said that before we went live. Quit touching your face. So let's start here. Mr. Mike Pedersen, please introduce yourself and tell everyone who you're with.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Pedersen. I am the Audiovisual Experience Manager at Iowa State University. Our primary role is we oversee what are considered general university classrooms, and we kind of serve a consultant role for audiovisual campus-wide. So.
Great, excellent. Josh Kaufman.
Hi, I'm Josh Kaufman. I'm with Tufts University in Medford, Mass. My department oversees the classrooms as well as the video conferencing operations on the campus, so we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off right about now.
Yep, aren't we all? And Jim Wellings.
Hi, Jim Wellings from Utah State University, located in Logan, Utah. I'm actually working from home today because I came back from a trip with a little bit of a cold, so I'm not gonna go into work and scare my coworkers. Let's see what I can do from home for next day or two.
Yeah, 14 days or so. No, we'll see.
Yeah.
You got to see how that comes up. I guess that's where we'll see how our institutions handle these. And then I think I have no video, but I see added on is Donovan Monday. I don't know if your mic is good, but you go ahead and introduce yourself if you're able to speak, or you're just listening in. I guess if I get nothing to, we'll know he's just listening in. And he's just listening in. Awkward silence. All right, and we'll move on. And so we are really excited to have two awesome SMEs join us because I think most of you who either are on the CCUMC listserv and or know NW Met are very familiar with Raul. He is the ultimate subject matter expert, I'd say, in all things streaming. So we could not talk about everything we're going through without inviting him on. So Raul, please introduce yourself.
Well, hi, everybody. I don't know, who doesn't know who I am yet? I'm Raul Burriel at Oregon State University, and I handle video delivery over the web here at Oregon State University. I also administer the Kaltura community listserv with several hundred participants from several hundred institutions related to Kaltura usage. And just a few weeks back, I also launched a sister Zoom community listserv whose membership tripled overnight when suddenly things started to get a little out of hand. So we have a lot of people on that Zoom community listserv discussing essentially best practices and best approaches for doing what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, I think you're about to get a lot more membership into that after you just, and I think actually we should send that out too. If you can post how people can be part of that. I know that there's going to be a lot.
I'll post those links in the chat.
Awesome. And make sure too, if people, I'll get to ground rules in a second. We're going to continue, and speaking of Zoom, we have, I will say, a good friend of mine, and he is all things Zoom, Twitter, and really just out there, and was huge for me to kind of get used to having a Zoom campus. So Gabe, thank you for coming and joining today. Just introduce yourself.
Sure, my pleasure. Gabe Moronta. I'm with Zoom. I'm a technical project manager. I help companies, institutions, organizations basically integrate Zoom into their existing AV infrastructure or build out new AV infrastructure. So,
great.
In a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then I see we have Donovan on twice now. So Donovan is one of our steering committee members. Can we hear you now? Two. All right. Well, you'll just have to jump in. All right. So we're going to get going. Okay. A couple of housekeeping things. We want this to be interactive. All right. So down in your chat, everyone open up the chat. Make sure you change your chat from panelists and change it to panelists and attendees. All right. So that way, as we're talking, we would love to be able to see your comments. To make this interactive, if we like what you're saying, we might invite you on. If we're talking about something and you've found a solution, we might invite you on and promote you up into the panel. So again, we're all learning, we're all growing, we're all trying to figure out what to do here. So I think that's the thing. So let's just jump right in. How was this last week for everyone? Let's set some context. I think that I'll give it first. So not this Friday, the Friday before, our president announces we're doing a test. We're going to do a test Wednesday through Friday. It didn't take by the time I showed up Monday. This is no longer a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is shut down. We're moving on. It came out this last Friday, our announcement that we're closed. The campus is closed except for handling a few international students who can't leave. We're closed for 4 weeks. And that just made, the meme of that escalated quickly, I think has never had more meaning than this last week. How's everyone else? What are your situations? I think we've got a whole gamut here. So Raul, what's your situation like?
It's measured and organized. We have had very sensible communication from our leadership. We have seen the communication from other institutions who will frankly remain nameless, where the communication has been much more along the lines of, that's it, pack it up, everybody go home and figure it out. Fortunately, that is not largely what we've been seeing from most institutions. We had been planning, as have many others, about this very eventuality. We have created communications. We have created what we call a Keep Teaching webpage. Other institutions may call it something else, but almost every institution at this point has a Keep Teaching webpage. And the language to most of these web pages is very similar, very focused. You don't want to be all over the place when talking to your faculty and your students. You want to stay on message and focus on very specific situations. We have chosen to emphasize a couple of different platforms. In this case for us, it's been Canvas and Zoom. Focus on that. Let us show you how to use these tools, because in many scenarios, simply there has not been a need for an instructor to use Zoom in their teaching. They may have been here for many, many years, and Zoom simply was not a factor. And now we're telling them you have to use Zoom. And so here's our communication. This is how you use Zoom. We have we've been all hands on deck. Doesn't matter what you were doing before. You've been called in now to take in calls from faculty who are saying, look, I've never used Zoom before. Where do I find it? How do I use it? Truth is, a lot of that literature is available, but most people don't necessarily know where to go find it. So we are holding hands and we are showing people. The same thing with Canvas. A lot of faculty simply had no reason to use Canvas. Maybe even they weren't putting their syllabus into Canvas. And now it's at the bare minimum, put your syllabus on Canvas. And we have had a lot of buy-in from faculty telling us, in fact, our faculty senate has passed a measure saying that for frankly, first time I've ever heard our institution say it is required. Boy, that's a word that we never use on our campus. It is required that you use Zoom and Canvas in your teaching moving forward. And that's fantastic words to hear, not from our provost or our president, but from the faculty senate. That buy-in has been very encouraging, and we on the backside of this have done everything we can to facilitate this, to take in those calls, to hold those hands and guide people through these platforms.
Yep. No, and that's huge, because I like, we were talking about that before we started broadcasting, that you tell your faculty, hey, you're supposed to be loading your syllabus up onto Blackboard or Canvas or all these things. Make sure your content is available. And a lot of them just, no, I'm not going to do it. Overnight, now it's important. Now you have to. Now you've got to get up there and you have to make these changes. And I think that's huge in what, what we're going to get to and what it's going to look like in the future, but I'm going to save that point for later. But looking at the chat, we had a lot of people who are just extending spring break so far and maybe doing a couple of weeks of online as far as the plan right now. I think we all, it's just what the plan is right now. Is there anyone else, any of our panelists here who are we're just extending spring break, or we're solely minimal for a week or two so far? No, everyone. So, oh yeah, Mike.
Well, again, I think we're in spring break right now, and then we're just looking at online only for 2 weeks at this point. So through April 3rd. So I think still that's a relatively minimal response. Now, given new CDC guidelines that came out yesterday, and also a statement by the governor of the state of Iowa yesterday, I highly expect that to get extended, but not officially as of this minute. We are still only online only through April 3rd.
Yeah. How about anyone who's a full shutdown until the end of the year? Like, have we all gone that far? Josh, you're that far so far?
Yeah. Actually, Tuesday night, we were actually at the end of our steering committee meeting. They sent out an email from our president's office that effective on Friday the 13th, students had to leave the campus, and we were going to online only for the remainder of the semester, which we have begun. We're extending spring break by an extra week to get our faculty, online with what they need to do, and then straight to online only.
Yep. And what was that transition like? Were you set for it?
To an extent, we were set for it. I think the timeline was condensed by, as everything kept evolving very rapidly. And so instead of, the opportunity to have a more orderly rollout of it, maybe, or like you had said, you were originally going to have a test, I think it kind of became there's now 90 plus cases in Massachusetts. There's, a confirmed case on our campus. It's time to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think that's where, like, for us, I think we lucked out because we'd become a Zoom campus a couple months ago. So it was like, all right, everything is already there and we could make that transition. But I know a lot of people are thinking, gosh, how do we do this and how do we do it quick? And I know a lot of schools are still just now maybe making their announcements or don't know how to do that. So I want to jump up to Gabe really quick. So, I mean, I think, like I said, I think everyone became a Zoom campus overnight, whether in your plans or not. What kind of advice can we give those who are thinking, I still don't have I'm being told, especially as tech managers, are being told I have to start to figure out how we can do this online. What are those tools? How do I make my classrooms usable? I mean, what do we need to be doing here?
Honestly, it's so simple. So a lot of times, especially when we have our backs against the wall the way that we do, we tend to overthink things. At the core, I think I've mentioned this to you in the past, Joe. AV is still signal flow. If you understand signal flow, you understand how to get your classrooms ready. So Zoom Rooms is software that you download either PC or Mac appliance of your choice, and you ingest that signal the way you would any other signal. It's still a signal. You understand signal flow. You can do this. We have resources and the Zoom website. Go to support.zoom.us. Do a type of quick search for Zoom rooms. I'll put the link in the chat in a few, but you'll see all the Zoom rooms design guides for an actual Zoom rooms, classroom ideas. It may not be the ideal perfect classroom, but you could be like, okay, I could take this, I could take that, because not all classrooms are built the same. Not all lecture halls are built the same. Some may have more, some may have less, depends what you have. But we also have those tools. All those tools are available online for free if you go and look for it. That's number one. Number two, if you're just using the desktop licenses, again, those resources are available online for you to go and say, I want to know how to use this desktop better. I want to know how to do a virtual background like Joe. I want to know how to record, how to do a webinar. How am I going to explain to a teacher how to lead a classroom? Those tools are online again. Everything is available. It's searchable. We have the traditional chat help once you go on our website, or you can just email somebody at support@zoom.us and somebody will respond to you and they'll help you out.
Yeah.
So
it's been huge for us. And that was the one thing when we started putting all our training materials together and we thought we would have to do it ourselves. Almost everything Zoom had already done well ahead of time. We have a great question here from Colleen on the chat is how are you accommodating students with disabilities? Josh, you are huge in universal design and disability services for our AV. Is there anything you guys did different or that you already had in place or changing for this model? I'll also let anyone else jump in, but I know maybe, do you have a comment for that? And Colleen, if you have a comment.
No, we haven't, at least to my knowledge, done anything different. What I would say is that fortunately Zoom itself is already very easy, it's very user friendly. It complies with certain elements of universal design. There's options where you can put in, you have somebody live, typing in captions, for example, as you go. I would say that with online learning, there is a lot of accessibility that needs to be considered that we don't normally think about in the classroom. And going beyond just the technology side, there's ways of making sure the information is conveyed that can be utilized by students with various abilities.
Okay. Yeah. And so I guess, what about so I know there's closed caption with Zoom. Are you able to get someone there to type these in? I don't know. I think most people are like this. You're saying these courses are not they're not designed to be online, right? And now we're delivering them online. Are there these accessibility things that we can add or that we have in place, or is someone having to type it, download the transcript? What are the practices that we can actually do right now?
This is Raul, and I can speak a little bit to that. We have workflows related to Zoom and captioning. Zoom has ASR, automatic speech recognition, also known as machine captioning, is built into the platform. And we have the box checked right now so that every Zoom session we have gets these machine captions. That is, these are captions that appear with a Zoom recording after the fact. The Zoom has integration for live captioning with a professional captioner who can, in real time, add captions. And it's my understanding that Zoom is also beta testing machine captioning in real time as well. I'm very excited about that functionality, but it is at this moment, I believe, still in beta testing.
Okay. And Jim, that's good to know. Jim, you wanted to say something?
Well, yeah, the last few conversations, piece of the conversation on this brings up an interesting question. I think that some people may have. How many people are trying to recreate their synchronous experience for their now remote students, and how many are doing asynchronous? So on our campus, we had two different systems in place. We have asynchronous web, lots of web content, classes that are designed for that, and they have been prepped and have been doing that for a long time. Now we have a bunch of additional classes that we're maybe attempting to deliver synchronously or using our lecture capture system to produce an asynchronous lecture. Just curious, what's the kind of common ground here. How many are trying to do synchronous classes with a platform like Zoom or something else? And how many are attempting to suddenly take everything asynchronous?
Yeah, we're going straight just synchronous. We're, it's the class is there. You're you're going into the Zoom session. The faculty member is sending out their Zoom account and or creating a Zoom meeting, whichever way they're doing it. And that's what we're, and that's how we do it. I think that might change as we look more down the road, and faculty members are going to, I see it becoming more asynchronous as the semester goes on. But right now it's just hurry up and do something. Thankfully, we're in spring break right now, but we weren't last week when we did start this. So I think that it's going to be kind of the same thing as well. And it will change and get better, right? I think this is not just learning for us, but this is learning for faculty who have never even thought about teaching online, especially the tenured faculty, right? Who never had to have that situation. So I don't know. Anyone else?
So at Oregon State University, we have a very large online learning program, which we call eCampus. It's designed to be asynchronous. The content is uploaded in terms of, yes, videos, Word documents, PowerPoints, images, and so forth, with the intention of delivering content to students around the world. The concept of doing something like that synchronously doesn't make sense because we expect that we're going to have students in time zones that are not amenable to those students. You can't have a 9 a.m. class Pacific time and expect that students in China are going to be able to tune in and participate in that class. It is designed very expressly and explicitly to be asynchronous. That is not what we're doing with our on-campus classes as we move them online. We are moving those to be synchronous. A lot of our literature in terms of how to teach online revolves around sticking to your appointed classroom times from 9 to 10 a.m. on a Monday. Don't go longer than those windows. Your students are expected that they're going to be going to other online classes. And so when you go overtime or you're doing a class at a different time, you may be stepping over somebody else's class. And a lot of this is synchronous teaching is, of course, going to be facilitated with tools such as Zoom, where it's proving to be very useful. We expect that all the students that are going to be in those classes are local to our campus, and so the time zone is not an issue. And we want to maintain a certain sense of normalcy, of continuity. We want students to feel that classes continue to exist. They just so happen that they are now sitting at a chair in front of a computer rather than a chair in a classroom. We in fact have faculty that are going into a classroom and teaching that class from a classroom in front of what is frankly a bunch of empty chairs. But because our AV technicians are facilitating this connectivity from the classroom to the Zoom cloud, the faculty is comfortable. They're not entirely adopting a new paradigm where now they have to find a place in their home or in their office to teach from. They simply walk into the classroom, continue to teach as if they were in front of a bunch of students, because they're just virtual students. And so for a faculty member, whether they've been doing this for years or they're brand new, it is a comfortable experience for them. So we've got our eCampus, and that continues to exist. And our on-campus teaching has simply moved to for right now, a temporary virtual synchronous teaching paradigm.
Wow. Mike, you were nodding at that. Do you have a comment on that?
No, just sounds great.
I know that's hey, someone has thought this out. I'm actually a couple things. I'm gonna do something really quick. I'm lining up. I feel like I'm a radio DJ now. This is great. This is my new calling. I know Don Merritt is on, and they do a lot with their online as well, and they have a very unique way of doing their classes. So if there's anything unique, I would promote Don up for you to talk, but I'm going to give you a second because we actually have a hand raised. So Stephanie from Texas A&M A&M Corpus Christi has a hand raised, and hopefully I'm going to make you and allow you to talk. So if you have all right, you're in to talk. If you have a microphone that is able to be unmuted, because you are muted at the moment, and wanted to have a question, I just allowed you to talk. See, we roll with these things. We make this stuff up as we go along here. We all have to. So did you have a specific question or something you wanted to comment on, Stephanie? And the awkward silence goes. All right. I'm going to, I'll leave you on. So if you can, if you have the question, I saw a hand raised. If everyone wants to raise a hand and you have something you wanted to talk about, do put it in and raise your hand. Use the little, under your participants, you can start and have the different gestures. So we want to make sure that we do make this, interactive as we can. Great. Dawn, you ended up saying that you can, so I am going to jump Dawn on. Let me scroll down to you. And Dawn Merritt from UCF, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me to chat in.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'll be honest, I'm multitasking here. So I think your question was what UCF is doing for online support?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you guys are obviously have a very unique model there that I
Right.
think can speak a lot to what we're doing.
So in some ways, I think we were well positioned for this case. All faculty at UCF, so Canvas is our LMS, and all faculty at LMS, all courses have a shell created in Canvas automatically. That's because we are using Canvas Gradebook as our integration for reporting grades at the end of the semester, but also because at the beginning of the semester for some of the student financial aid reporting and participation in academic activities, the Canvas shell is used for that kind of reporting at the very beginning of the semester. So even if you're a face-to-face class, there already exists the shell for your course. So we've got another advantage in that 86% of our students already take a course online. So the vast majority of our students are already familiar with the LMS. They know how it's used. They know how to get in and what to do once they get there. However, only about half of our faculty have ever done anything within the LMS. So we've got a little bit of a case where in some ways we're feeling pretty good about the student support concerns. We know we'll have some, but not our biggest case, but the faculty is where we're really trying to concentrate some of our support goals right now.
Great. And so what does that look like? How do you transition them? And first off, kudos to already having a shell made up for every class, because that is something that might be one of the takeaways I think that all of us are going to find, and that we'll all move that way. But so now talk about how do you, if 50% of the faculty haven't done this, what does that look like?
So we were on spring break last week when all of the announcements started coming out. We've actually, the Division of Digital Learning that I'm a part of, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks already. Some of the things that we can do is that we have template courses that we can put into those shells so that the faculty don't have to start from scratch. We've been training up folks across the entire division to help with the web courses questions that come in, so that even my integrators, by the way, and especially a number of my hourly integrators, have already gone through our essentials course so that they understand the basic training we would give to a faculty member who's just learning to teach in one of these, so that if they're called upon, they can at least help us point faculty towards other resources. So we put together our Keep Teaching and Keep Learning websites last week. We've already got a lot of videos that already existed because of the faculty development that we already do. We've repurposed all of those, put them all in one place to start guiding people in those directions. Starting tomorrow, we're going to hold some live, synchronous, online workshops for faculty who want to connect to us, and then we can talk them through, all right, you've got a blank course, here's where you should start, here's what you should do first. And really a lot of what you've all been saying is what we've been doing too. Keep it simple. First goal is to just get through this week, get you familiar with what's going on, and then we will continue to add resources and content into the system as we know how long this is going to last. As of right now, UCF is only closed for the next 2 weeks. But as we all see everything going on across the entire country right now, that could change at any time. But we're trying to get people through this immediate hurdle. Since we were on spring break last week, the first 2 days, today and tomorrow, face-to-face classes were canceled so that those faculty would have time to transition their courses to online by Wednesday. Online courses have kept meeting as usual because they're not synchronous, at least for the most part. So there's really no interruption there. So our goal is to have everyone ready for something on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it seems that makes the transition a lot easier, right? Because you have things already in. And then I'll ask, I guess, maybe this, and I'll say to you, Don, and maybe anyone else can jump in. Thank you very much too, by the way. Is there, are there any academic integrity issues do you think that we might be dealing with because the courses are not designed to be online? Are those things that people have brought up, or I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard much of it, but you also think that if the courses are set up to be exams and not essays, and an online course is just fundamentally different, are those issues?
I'd say it's a concern, and that's one of the reasons I think there are a number of faculty who've been reluctant to move online because of the possibility of cheating or whatever the case may be. There are a number of proctoring solutions out there that I think folks are thinking about. I think the biggest thing on the horizon for us is final exams. We're still several weeks away from that, but we've got a little bit of time to get up to that point. Assessment is a question, is a concern, and in a well-designed course, you can mitigate a lot of those concerns. But as we move online, again, I think we're trying to focus on making sure we get the courses up and running. And as we work with faculty to develop those assessments, that's something we'll do, on a case-by-case basis.
No, totally agree. Anyone else have other issues with that, or how you're handling your faculty during this time and assessment? Thank you, Don. I'll promote you back down into a listener. Thank you for coming on, and do raise your hand because I would love to. And also, I will do the quick commercial. CCUMC, we're doing this again tomorrow, right? And you're on the panel with that, if I'm not mistaken.
I am, yes.
Right. So I'll send out the link for the CCUMC one that is continuing. We're continuing the conversation. So basically the CCUMC one is just listening to Don talk for an hour and a half. And we're all
No. It'll be a lot more than that.
And we will all be wiser for the such. So thank you so much. And I'll promote you back down. And so Josh, you were going to say.
I was going to say that I think that, yes, we're trying to keep it. I'm not speaking necessarily for Tufts here, but more from an instructional design standpoint, which is where my academic background sits, and that it requires kind of a shift in the thinking of how you're handling assessment. It's not just, thinking about how we're, going to assess in the traditional way. It's, can we do it in a different way because we're now in this different situation? And that's really where I think after these initial weeks where things are kind of, we're going to end up having to figure out our solutions, less from a, technical and how do we make all this work standpoint, and more from a, how do we learn from what is already well researched and well known for online learning, and how do we apply that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, and I think that's a lot of instructional designers are doing a lot of I told you so's right now, right? I mean, along with us as AV people who've probably been trying to sell some type of Zoom room or streaming capture service for our classrooms for forever, have a little bit of an I told you so that we're going to hold on to until it'll pay the best dividends for us. So I want to leave really quick. Well, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to go now to Donovan for the third time here. No. And so Donovan, welcome. And you are on our steering committee. Can you just tell everyone, I guess you are with West Virginia, tell them who you are, who you're with, and all of that, and any comments that we've heard so far.
Yeah, I'm Donovan. I am with West Virginia University, specifically at the Health Science Center. It's been an interesting day today. We got a call this morning at about 8:15 saying that they were sending everybody home and that we were going to be working remotely for the foreseeable future. As you know, West Virginia is the last state holding out for any confirmed cases of coronavirus. But there was just an interesting article in the New York Times that said that if any place is going to be hit hard, it's going to be West Virginia because of our aging and poor health population that we have. So we're just kind of bracing the door at this point, knowing that it's here and that it's part of what's going on, but we just can't put a finger on it yet. So they are making the choice to send all faculty and staff home. We as an institution have spun up 40,000 Zoom licenses in the last 2 days.
Wow.
So we are moving faster than anything in West Virginia has ever moved for a lot of things. So that's where we're sitting at the moment. And I've been going over with our staff and our faculty how to best remote support what's going on here. There are some new tools that we've never used, especially, you know, as IT people, things that we've never had to think about, and now we're thinking about a lot. So I think we're going to be okay. There's definitely going to be growing pains. There's definitely going to be issues. Our biggest issue in West Virginia in general is bandwidth. And we have students that are going to be going home to rural West Virginia in the middle of nowhere that, you know, DSL is a luxury and cell service is not, you know, it's not an option. So we're at that point where we're trying to figure out how to best handle all of that.
Yeah, so you have some equity issues that you're going to have to work through there. And, you know, that's a term that I've heard Brandy down around a lot as we've been doing all this, is how do we make sure that as we go to these online things, that, you know, again, not every student may even have a laptop, right? Not every student may have a internet connection at home. So how are we making sure that all these changes are not adversely affecting those who have less? So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's been a big discussion, and the downtown campus is definitely having more of an issue with that than we are, because we do have a laptop program for all of our med students, and they get a laptop when they come to school here. But you know, we're finding out that, you know, even Zoom, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but even like the Zoom dashboards and getting new accounts created has taken longer today than it has in the past because of the influx of accounts that they're getting. So, you know, before it was almost instantaneous, and now it's taking us between 45 minutes and an hour to get a Zoom account created. So it's just these are all learning curve things that, and Zoom, I will say, I will give a shout out to Zoom. They have been absolutely fantastic about supporting what we need to do right now. But there are definitely, I mean, there are definitely going to be issues.
Yeah.
If I can speak to something that Donovan said, this crisis is revolutionizing the adoption of technologies in higher ed. No doubt. There's a lot of institutions who overnight adopted Zoom, for one thing. For another, our institution, for instance, we've had Microsoft Teams for a while, but it wasn't really gaining any traction. We know the adoption curve for technologies in higher ed. It takes years to move everyone from, say, one email system to another email system. Yet over the last week, we went from like almost nobody using Teams to everybody on Teams, and no blowback, no resistance. It's speak to something that one of my supervisors has been saying. This crisis, for better or worse, is moving higher ed 3 to 5 years into the future. We are adopting technologies that we didn't expect would be used in higher ed for quite some time. and would probably be slow rolled for over a number of years. Suddenly here we all are doing things like synchronous teaching and online delivery of content, and everybody putting their content on Canvas or Blackboard or what have you, 100%, when for years and years it was always considerably less than 100%. I wouldn't call this crisis an opportunity. It is simply a reality that we have cut through a lot of what is frankly red tape and resistance. No one's stomping their feet and saying, no, 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 I'm not going to use your technology. Everyone's seeing the writing on the wall. I've seen, for instance, a lot of institutions who are simply adopting the free version of Zoom. I understand that Zoom has lifted some restrictions on that platform, which is certainly appreciated. Introducing new technologies in the middle of a crisis can certainly be quite a learning curve, but it's also oftentimes a necessity. If you didn't have a tool like Zoom, and you need a tool like Zoom, having it adopted overnight is frankly the only way to do it. Yes, do you want to add something, Donovan?
Yeah, and I'm wondering, maybe you guys talked about this already, but has anybody been having these discussions, especially since Josh is instructional design and we work with our instructional design team too, are we having those discussions with the instructors? What do you really have to have for your class? Like, do you really need to see the students on the other end? Do you really need to have this synchronous class as opposed to recording your content and downloading it later? I mean, is that really a necessity? Is it part of your accreditation? Is it part of something that you have to have for your class? Are we having those conversations with them? Because I'm having those with our people in our sessions. I'm saying, look, you really guys need to go home and think about how you're presenting this class and how much technology do you really have to have?
I can, please, Jim, I don't want to monopolize this. Please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there. I was going to say at Utah State we have a actually fairly large team that works on helping instructors develop content and look at their courses and determine what the best method of delivery is and so forth. They are really, really busy, obviously today. They were busy over the weekend, but a lot of instructors have taken that step already here. We've been doing lecture capture for about 4 years, and it's all ties into that, into our learning management system. And there's a lot of instructors who have never put a lot of content in Canvas are now considering how they're going to do that. And for those who are not ready to move there yet, we have lecture capture in every classroom. So on Wednesday, when we start up again, we'll have some instructors in empty classrooms capturing content through our Kaltura system. And I'm sure that's going to be what several of them are going to do for a little while.
Yeah, and Frank brings up a good point on the chat that this is really new for a lot of older faculty, and they're probably scared to make this jump. They have no idea even how to, like I did a one-on-one session with a faculty member this morning where he was just like, I have no idea what's going on. Tell me what to do. I don't know. And it was literally sit down with him and go, look, this is, it's not that difficult. We need to, it's just take a breath and jump in. This is fun, and somebody else said this is fundamentally going to change how we do things. And what somebody else said that it was we're going to look back and see how the internet and technology saved us all. Maybe that's the case.
The question of accreditation is a very good one. A month or two ago, I was having conversations with our instructional designers about the possibility of doing these synchronous classes online, and here I am, just a lowly technologist. They informed me about the issues that came up almost a decade ago now with the paradigm of the MOOC, and how institutions ultimately put their accreditations on the line because of MOOCs, and these graduation rates or these pass-fail rates were so abysmal that ultimately a lot of the MOOC paradigm was abandoned. It was disproven. It doesn't work. Too many students simply do not attend. Too many people register for a class and then don't bother. And yet here we are now 2 months later, and suddenly we're doing MOOCs. You can call them whatever you want, call them synchronous teaching, but it is arguably the technology has changed. The technology is better. I'd say that putting content available asynchronously is not the same as holding classes in real time synchronously. It is a different concept, and now we can do things like attendance and know who has participated in the synchronous class, and that hopefully is going to help in terms of success rates, of improving graduation rates and pass-fail rates, where arguably 10 years ago when this MOOC thing was first tried out and failed so miserably, so now we have better technologies that hopefully make it more successful. But if what we start discovering is that once again students don't show up and our pass-fail rates start dipping, then this opportunity, if we have to call it an opportunity, this opportunity is going to be lost. We need to make sure that we are being successful here and that we're not just simply slapping band-aids all over the place until we can simply get back to what we were doing in the old days.
Yep, absolutely. And Gabe, I love how you chimed in by writing it on the chat. So you actually have a comment on top of that or a question, which I think is going to be great.
No, just to Raul's earlier point when he was talking about how it was cutting through all the red tape because people were just automatically jumping in. That's been a problem, not only in the education business, but in just all factors of AV. Everybody is slow. You know, AV is the last of the table in every scenario, whether it's construction or everything. We've all been there. How do you now cut through this red tape? How do you take advantage of this and be like, listen, this is what we want to do to either, you know, I hate the term future-proof, but I put it there, future-proof or crisis-proof. But to try to circumvent this in the future so that you're not playing catch-up, so that you are ahead of the curve, so that you are ready and you can say, hey, USC, we're good, we're ready to go, or Utah State, we're ready to go, Oregon State, we're ready to go. How do you do that? How will you jump in there and take advantage of that? Because I think that's kind of been the $1 million question in the AV industry for as long as I've been in this industry is, what do we do to show them that this is important? We need to plan this. This isn't a, hey, this is a nice wish list, but no, get out of here. We need to buy new whatever it is.
You know, it's funny that you say that, and I think I can say this for most of the people here, is that, you know, we did this so fast and so quickly and moved so in such a way that, you know, did we shoot ourselves in the foot in a little bit where, you know, it's like, well, you know, you made that look easy. So now it's okay, even though it was all this work on the back end and we jumped through hoops to get things done. But, you know, we went from 0 to 100 in 3 days, you know, it's just a catch-22 in that sense. And that's in that case, because now it's like, well, okay, well, you guys did that in 3 days. You can certainly do this now. You know, it's,
and you're probably going to find that, you know, you got it done in 3 days, but, you know, without the planning that you maybe should have been doing, you know, when this crisis is over, you're going to go back and look at it and go, wow, that's a mess. That's a mess. We're going to need to go back and change that. We're going to need to completely redo that. But yeah, I guess it got us through, you know, in the interim. But all that after the fact thing, leadership's going to, you know, not pay as much of attention at that point. Crisis is over. So yeah, I'd be curious, Donovan, you know, as many Zoom licenses as you spun up, you know, what are you going to find 6 months down the road that where you're going to go, oh, that was a mistake?
That bucket has a lot of holes in it.
Yep.
No,
That's kind of the issue, right? Is we're all sitting here going, okay, what are we going to do? How do we handle this? And we've jumped into it, but I've seen a lot of coming together. I've seen a lot of the purse strings have opened up, that's for sure. And we're all going to be submitting impact reports in 6 months going, okay, what was the true cost of this? There's no doubt about that. But Mark put on in the quote or in the chat something great. Data. We need data. We need to track this. I think that the more we track it now and we see how these things are going to are impacting in totality, because there's going to be at some point where we're going to have to level this whole thing out. And actually, Mark, I'm really interested if you'd be willing to come on and talk a little bit, because you're with the University of Washington. You guys started this whole thing, right? You were the first to say, we're closing down, moving on.
That's Mark at Oregon State. He's my boss.
Wait, but it says Washington.
Mark C? Or is it a different Mark?
Oh, wrong. Sorry, wrong one. My bad. That's your boss?
He's one of my supervisors. I've got a few.
All right, so I had the wrong one. All right. Well, I was ready to throw in if someone from Washington, we'd love to talk to you. But that is a good point with the data, right? So, all right, well, what data do we need to collect? Not just, I don't think I've ever had 50 years, laptops to be able to loan out approved so fast in my entire career, because we actually oversee the laptop checkouts, and we have a lot of students who obviously don't have their own. A 40,000 Zoom licenses is not cheap. Are there other technologies that we should be jumping in on, or that we're seeing this? I mean, I don't know. I'm going to throw that out there.
I think if learning management system, if there's anyone out there who is not currently using one, now would be an excellent time to get one. I know we would not be able to do the stuff we're doing without our LMS, and lecture capture frankly, that's what's enabling us to do the push to online with all those courses that haven't been online. That's how we are able to do that now. And it's looking, at least, and I'm not in today, but from the communications from my department, it's looking a lot less painful than we maybe initially assumed it was going to be.
Yeah, I just want to second there, Jim, particularly with lecture capture. I mean, rolling out with, Echo personal capture starting about 2 weeks out from this, when we sent an email to the faculty saying, hey, start getting ready because this might be happening. And the number of calls we started getting for people saying, hey, we want to use Echo personal capture went through the roof. And the number of hours I spent in people's offices and whatnot showing them how to use it on their laptop went through the roof. And I think that that's really, if you're not invested in some way for instructors to capture their lectures themselves without having to be in person, then that's something that's going to be growing exponentially after this.
So what about any changes to our physical classrooms? Are there things outside of lecture capture, like are there other technology? I look at this way that no one would see this coming. We have more likely the case that we'll have a major earthquake and half our campus will be down. That could happen at any time, right?
Yeah.
So what are these things that we can use software type of, software defined AV and stuff to be able to move and not rely on the AV so much in the classroom? And is there a fear that our jobs are, if we can show that they don't need us to do all this, right? If the more successful we can transition everything off, are we, what does that say for our need?
We've been making ourselves obsolete for a long time. I mean, the better we build our rooms, the less we're needed. At least that seems like the way. So you just throw remote communication and online learning into that, then it's time to change our learning again, I guess.
So let me ask you guys a question. You guys are in higher ed. I'm not. I can't speak to what you guys do on a daily basis. But that brings up a question. With this, that's everything that's been going on. Does this open up the door to new opportunities for you guys to be able to provide a different sort of service where maybe you're not providing on-site support as much, but you're providing sort of an operation center, like a NOC command center now, for your learning environment. Does that open up that door? Is that something that you guys think you would be able to propose to whomever, the leadership is and say, hey, this is another revenue stream or another avenue to kind of look into to maybe help, I saw somebody make a comment about handicapped students or other avenue. Like do you think that there's some hope for this?
I think it definitely is. I mean, this is something that I've talked about for a number of years at various places I've worked, that as we're moving away from the, being the guy who goes out and plugs it in or brings the cart, the classical idea of the AV guy, to technical professionals who are versed in everything, a wide range of skills. Yes, I think that moving to this kind of command center idea where we're able to, able to see everything, from how's the bulb life in our systems to who's, what's the status of the 15 Zoom calls that are going on because we have 15 blended classes. And this is something that I've talked about actually, hopefully we'll be talking about at InfoComm and did talk about at NWMet last year, that by adding these blended classes and moving towards that method of teaching, and this is something that I think we are going to have to work with instructional designers, with instructors, with administrations to put forward, we'll be building a bulwark against things like the virus that just hit, like the annual flu, like bad weather, like Joe said, earthquakes and other things that you just can't see coming. And no longer, we have to move away from the idea of people sitting in seats staring at the instructor. So it's as much a technological shift as it is a paradigm shift.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And I think, so two things. First, Mark, you said this will drive AV as a service. You're now excused from the show. No. And then, but Don Merritt, again, drops another wisdom bomb, is the documenting what we're doing now moves our jobs from tactical to strategic. And I love that. That is a paradigm shift in our own thought, right? And understanding that we become part of the solution for delivery, which hopefully we always were, but maybe as traditional AV people, we still think more of, point A to point B type of AV, and we need to be thinking a little bit more different. I learned how to speak at one point. And how we can actually be strategic in the decisions that we're making on a bigger sense. We do have our other co-founder of HETMA just decided to join the show here. BC, obviously you're on. We were just talking about, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen, you're running around campus getting training done and stuff like that. So I want you, first introduce yourself, two, then say kind of how things have been. And then also we just left the conversation of, we've never seen the purse strings open fast enough. So I think you can speak to all of that we were just on.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't met or haven't seen me before, my name is BC Hatchett. I'm the Associate Director for AV Design and Support and Media Services for Vanderbilt University. Like Joe mentioned, I've been running around like crazy. I think last week, most work days averaged about 16, 17 hours. We are a traditional based campus, like in-person lectures and in-person instruction is a feature, not a bug for our university. That's what we do. That's what the pedagogy is based upon. That's what the students are looking for in their experience. So as of Friday of the week before last, we did not have Zoom. And as of Thursday last week, we had Zoom. So if you ever have the opportunity to try to lift a service in 3.5, 4 days, I recommend that you don't do that. It does cause those sleepless nights, but I cannot, and it doesn't matter here. I cannot speak highly enough of the professionalism and response time of Zoom. I see you down there, Gabe. It was fantastic working with them, and I think it's a model for how to collaborate with manufacturers and service providers. They definitely saw what our institution was going through and what we needed to do, especially with the time constraints that we had, and they performed outstanding. Additionally, hats off, I'm sure a lot of you are running into the same thing at your universities. Things are getting flipped on their head on a constant basis. And I've noticed, especially with our university, a lot of those traditional silos that were around have collapsed. Everybody is working hand in hand right now to make sure that our students and faculty have what they need, because there's other considerations that I want to make sure that we all take into account from the academic side. So it can be lost sometimes when you look strictly at the services and the equipment, but it's the instructional hours. So a lot of universities could have potentially been in a situation where they would not be getting the necessary instructional hours in for their programs to remain accredited. And not to mention that for those accreditation, you have to have those in-person, or at least those faculty-student interactions as well, which count towards those instructional hours. So having to lift this is not necessarily just about the service or just about the pedagogy. It's an actual degree granting issue in a lot of cases. So I hope everybody is doing, with that said, I hope everybody's doing well out there and everybody's coping, and I will listen because I'm sure I've missed a lot of salient points up to this time.
Yeah, that's all good. And I love, so, BC, you and I text and chat all the time. So this has been a crazy week for both of us. And it's great to kind of, well, as we see, we develop, but you bring, and what we've ended up doing, you've always said the best. A week ago, I didn't have Zoom. Today we have Zoom. It's like, yep, this is the extent we've had to go through. You made me think of something else. What about, I touched my face again. Damn, I can't do that. All right. I know. Don't get mad at me. Everyone's on the other side, not doing it themselves. So,
that's okay. We just had a party bus go by my office. So apparently not everybody's gotten the message about, not doing that anymore.
Oh boy. A party bus, really? So all in California, we're shutting down all the restaurants, bars, all that stuff. So I think Illinois is doing the same thing. And
yeah, they announced the same thing here after pictures came out of lines 30 or 40 deep for people at bars in Southie. So
yeah, no, my daughter is she's a waitress, paying her way through school, and she just texted saying that they just closed down her restaurant. So obviously, which brings up actually a point of fear. And I talked about this with my staff and our administration. It's really easy for us to start getting into all the plans of what we're going to do for technology. But we have to remember that for this age demographic that we're working with, this is probably the first time they've ever had to deal with something major like this. Most of them were born right around 9/11, right? So they don't really remember that transition and what that was like. So there's a human factor that we have to think about here.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
No, I was going to throw it out. So how are we handling the human factor?
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to talk about. And I talked with my staff last week as well, because everybody is pitching in, at least especially last week. It's starting to calm down some now. But last week, everybody is working, 16, 17 hours a day, putting in Herculean efforts against the backdrop of the madness of what's going on with the coronavirus. You've got, Wednesday night, I was sitting at my daughter's cheer gym checking emails. And then the next thing you know, NBA is shutting down, the SEC tournaments shutting down, stores are starting to close. It's just, one thing after another. So when you're putting in all this time at work, and by the time you get home, it's not like you can turn it off, because there's also real world things that are happening everywhere.
Yeah. How about anyone else? How about student workers? How are your student workers handling this?
If I may, let's be clear. This is unprecedented in arguably world history, except maybe even like the Spanish influenza of 1918. But even then, it's like people didn't travel then, or we didn't have global economies like we do now. And so you do have to consider how to deal this with your family, your children, your parents and grandparents, and even for yourself. Of course, there's always the talk of practicing self-care. There's right now I am simply in the moment, and I think everyone needs to simply look at this as a one day at a time, one moment at a time scenario. We don't know what things are going to look like in a month or two, or even in a week. Things are changing so rapidly. So we simply need to deal with the now, roll with the punches. I am talking to my children in a sense that we simply need to handle this as it happens. We're going to address the current crisis. And do we have enough food? Do we have enough water? Do we have enough toilet paper? And just deal with it. No one's accustomed to being locked up in their house for multiple weeks. And we need to deal with that. For our student workers, a lot of our student workers, all of our student workers, and this is going to be the same for everybody here, a lot of them simply rely on that regular paycheck for their rent, for their food. And when we start talking about how your campus is closed, nobody come in, and your students workers, their job essentially involves coming into campus and answering phones or going around and troubleshooting computers on somebody's desk, or troubleshooting computers in a classroom. How do they provide that support when they're being told not to come into the office? Are you telling them, you guys are temporarily laid off, you're not going to get that check, good luck with your rent? And so our scenario has been, we are setting up essentially these persistent Zoom rooms. where we are publicizing the links. We're telling faculty and staff, here's a Zoom room, dial into this with Zoom, and there's going to be people there who can help you walk through the initial troubleshooting and escalate where necessary. And the people who are there to help you with that are our students. Those students are going to be dialing into those Zoom rooms from home, the same as faculty and staff. They may get elevated permissions in terms of hosting and so forth. They'll be able to take someone off into a breakout room, help them troubleshoot something, all from the comfort of their home, where they may be forced to self-isolate and so forth, all without having to worry about where right now we use call centers and somebody dials a number and 6 phones all ring. We can't do that when students only have their own personal cell phones, and we don't want to be redirecting this round robin phone system to somebody's personal cell phone. So instead, we set up these permanent or persistent virtual rooms. Someone drops in, a student is there to hold your hand, walk you through some initial things. If it needs to be escalated, we are all available for that escalation support.
I love that. So let's walk this through again. This is what you're doing, because I'm going to walk this through because my staff is on and we need to steal this. Okay. So essentially what you have done is created a Zoom room just for, essentially it's called your service desk. People pop into it. You can use the breakout session of that to be able to take someone into it, talk them through their problem, and they have a consistent way of being able to reach out to you without then having to worry about forwarding to student workers and all of those other things that go on. Essentially, that's it.
Precisely. And in fact, we can support this with more people than, say, with a call center. A call center would have a limited number of physical phones. We may have 6 phones in our call center. We can have 20 students in that virtual Zoom room. Anyone who logs into that Zoom room and is one of our students can be one of those support resources. And we can add to that even our internal staff, our staff who usually is tasked with doing additional or separate duties. Right now, everyone's all hands on deck. Never mind these other tasks you're usually doing. Everyone go into the Zoom room, wait for faculty to come into that Zoom room. And when somebody says, I need help connecting to Zoom, well, they're already in Zoom. I need help using Zoom with my students. I need help setting up my Canvas course. We can start you off. We know where the literature is. We can point you to a knowledge base article. We can read the knowledge base article with you and walk you through the step-by-steps. And if at some point you click a button and you get an error, I've got your name. Let me escalate this to my administrator, and the administrator will get back to you and we'll troubleshoot this for you.
Yeah. Oh, that is fantastic. I think that is a takeaway that all of us can really learn from, and you just keep that open. So that's fantastic. Also, Greg had put on the chat something else with student workers that they're just skilling to work in the other areas of IT service desk. Is this a time where with your staff and your students, you just also use it to build skills? What about those on the boots on the ground employees who maybe, if you're not getting classroom tickets, what do they do during this time? Are you feeling that your staff are getting scared about their jobs, or your student workers? Jim, thoughts on that?
Our student workers right now are supporting the faculty that are gearing up to capture their lecturers who maybe have not paid too much attention to that so far. So they're familiar with the classroom equipment. The instructor can go to his or her classroom as they're used to, and they can capture their lecture there or work on capturing the materials, and the students can help them do that. So fewer trouble calls, stuff's just sitting there ready to use, but they're out there available to help the faculty.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, for our students, I think today or this week's spring break, so they're kind of all gone anyway, because that was kind of already pre-scheduled to be spring break. So actually, I talked to a few of them before they left, and because it's supposed to be all online for the following 2 weeks, I actually don't expect to have any of my students available to me for the foreseeable future. Now, I reassured them all that your job's secure. You come back when you can. But my students are largely, very hands-on for us. They're not really doing help desk or calls for us. So it's very difficult for me to find remote things for them to be working on for us. So, I do know it's managed by a different group, but our solution center is heavily dependent upon students. And, you know, I know that there were some conversations about what that was going to look like, and I haven't heard, you know, where they were headed with that yet, whether they were going to try and get those students to do help desk remotely, or if we were going to just have to try and run the solution center with the few full-time staff that operate that location.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And are you cutting back? Is everyone cutting back on their staff? Like Greg put on the chat here, which I'm completely jealous of. He's starting his summer refresh early now, because I walked into our entire staff and said, okay, we're starting now. Our POs are already pulled. We're getting into this. Next day, no one's allowed on campus. So we got tons of gear and nothing we can do with it.
Well, we're lucky that way, and we are, you know, my team, we're quickly looking at that, right? We're taking quick stock. I hadn't yet purchased all this stuff for summer, so, you know, I'm gonna hopefully do a full walkthrough of the classrooms I was hoping to upgrade tomorrow, get a quick survey of what I need to buy, and by the end of the week, get some stuff on order, because if this continues, and as long as they don't completely shut down our campus, which they haven't, faculty and staff are still allowed to report, yeah, we're hoping to get on that too, to do some early classroom upgrades for the summer.
Yeah. Oh, so I wish I can.
Yeah, so we're starting to look at that. We were in the process of getting our faculty involved right when this whole thing started. So we hadn't had a chance to get any POs cut yet, but we can't right now, because we were hearing that there's a possibility that every building on campus might have to go through a deep cleaning, since we did have potential exposure in a few buildings on campus. So that's, you know, it's going to be an interesting summer for us for sure, because we just don't really know what environment we're playing in yet.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's kind of the key. We're all sitting here, we're all getting giddy that we have 8 more weeks to get work done, yet who knows, you know? And I think this is the biggest unknown, and maybe we all feel this. We're all one email away from whatever plan we just came up with completely blowing up, right? We're one phone call away that could come, you know, 5 minutes from now. I mean, really, in what, 15 minutes, you know, President Trump is going to have a news conference. Who knows what's going to be announced? Is that going to completely change everything else? I mean, are a lot of these things that that some states and cities are doing are going to become national? I think that's what we're all watching, and we're all learning, and we're all trying to figure out, which moves to the other topic. Everyone who's saying they're doing their summer stuff early, I'm just so jelly right now. All right, what are our lessons learned going to be? Okay, so we go through this. How does this, I guess the big 2 questions, will this change the work? And, you know, how will our world be different? Even just our general world, if we would want to take that, or our AV world?
I'll dive in. A couple things here, I would say. First of all, I kudos to our campus. We pretty much had, it was interesting, we had both Zoom and WebEx available to every student and every faculty and staff person before this whole thing occurred. So we had both options available to everyone. And so, you know, we did not have to spin up, you know, thousands of licenses overnight. So that was, you know, kudos to our campus. And as lessons learned, I think we'll look back and go, we should do more of that, you know, being proactive. I do think, you know, watching some of the chat, I do think one of the things that will come away for us too is our campus standards will change. There will definitely be some changes to our campus standards, particularly in classrooms. I mean, I think I'm going to try and use this as an impetus. You know, so many of our classrooms had zero capability to do any kind of remote, either lecture capture or any kind of remote, you know, call out capability. And so, you know, one of the things that I'm going to be pushing is to change our campus standard and hopefully get the funding to change the campus standard to make sure that that's now integral to every classroom that we have on campus is the lecture capture and the remote conferencing. It is a limited amount of remote conferencing capabilities in every room.
Yep, absolutely.
I think one of our biggest takeaways is going to have to be that we can't ignore the option for distance. And I think that there's been an undeserved kind of bad reputation that goes with online learning, that goes with distance ed in higher ed particularly, that came from a series of early scandals with, some of the for-profits, and not to denigrate the for-profits, but that some of them did have problems over the years, and they did have some problems with accreditation and with legitimacy. And so then there is kind of a backlash against the idea of online education. I did my entire master's online from the University of Massachusetts. And what people don't understand is that it is one of the it's almost more rigorous than in-person education, and that there is a different way of thinking. And we're going to have to start thinking about that simultaneous to how we're thinking about it in class education. It can't just be one or the other. It's going to be both of them or none of them.
Yep, absolutely. So, and you bring up, so even going back, like with what Mike had said about, all right, so we got to change the way we think. Well, we have changed our technologies, lecture capture. Are there other things besides lecture capture? I mean, is that the winner, or is it the way we deliver? To me, the change, I know there was a lot of Twitter talk this last weekend about, and a bunch of us kind of went off on Sunday night. To me, the change is actually going to be just mandating where the content lives. And I think just making sure that LMSs are used much more, that we, like we even started a conversation with, they weren't mandated. Maybe they were be mandated that your syllabus is up. Maybe the schools will step in a little bit more with that. But I think, because I also fear we go too far the other way. There is something special about the on-campus experience, right? Especially at our large traditional schools, right? There is something unique about it, and we can't, I don't know, we need to preserve that in some way. BC?
Yeah, so Joe, I was going to say, I think I might disagree a little bit with some others here. I don't think that this is going to lead to an explosion in online education. I think it might show that the tools are where they need to be if you want to take a course online, but most if not all of the faculty that are having to lift their courses online don't have their courses designed for online delivery, and they don't really have an intention to do so. I mean, I think somebody said this is an absolutely unprecedented and extraordinary event that necessitates this. But from a pedagogical design aspect, you're taking classes that are primarily designed for in-person delivery, and we're trying to replicate that experience. In some cases, we have classrooms on campus that are outfitted with webcams and speakers and mics, so that faculty can walk in and teach their class essentially to an empty room so that they can continue to replicate that experience. We've already got tools that the faculty have been using. I was talking with our Center for Teaching earlier today, and they were talking about how when they looked back, the Brightspace usage logs, there has not been a massive push lately. I mean, the usage has stayed consistent. So it shows that they're using the LMS tools, but I think, trying to tailor these things to go from the in-person experience to online, I don't think we're going to see a huge jump up in that. If nothing else, we might see a little bit more, or excuse me, less hesitancy to do some accommodations by a distance if you need to teach a class or two by Zoom. But I don't think the pendulum's going to swing all the way the other way where it's all going to be distance all the time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love Don again put here. It isn't can or cannot. It's should or should not. Right. I think that's a good way of looking at it.
I'm gonna counterpoint a little bit to what BC said, and it's going to be we are going to have some faculty who are going to look at these tools and say, "Oh, I didn't know it was that easy." I'm going to also agree with those who say things like dance classes and other classes being held online simply are not a reality. But in scenarios where before using an LMS optionally in terms of like making your syllabus available to everyone, and it used to be some professors handed out a physical paper syllabus and others linked to a Google Drive or a Box Drive, and now essentially the policy is going to be everyone's syllabus goes into your LMS. And maybe that's the sheer extent of it, and nothing more than that. That alone is going to change a lot about how our institution teaches, because now we can say, look, every class has an LMS. Our accreditation is going to be a lot easier than before. Making a syllabus available to every student in a centralized way helps with accreditation. That's simply one of the elements. And now we're going to be able to say every class has a syllabus available in Canvas. campus. But that might be as far as some courses go. On the other hand, a lot of courses going to be a professor saying, oh, I didn't realize I can do this, and now I'm going to leverage these tools a lot more. It's not going to be a full pendulum swing from 0 to 100, but I fully expect that there's going to be a lot more Canvas use in the future. There's going to be a lot more Kaltura use in the future. There's going to be a lot more Zoom use in the future. Not everyone's going to use every one of those tools, but they're going to use them more than they used to.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're going to start seeing, if anything, a more adoption of the flipped classroom model, where they start doing a lot of this stuff. Faculty start doing a lot of this stuff in-house or in their office and putting it up, and then, like I said, doing more of that flipped model down the road.
Yeah. Well, and other places are ways that you can do group meetings, breakouts, so that type of those types of sessions where you no longer have to worry about when you're going to get your group together on a Sunday night where you can meet because everyone has something going on, that you can start understanding that we can use these tools in that way. I think that will be a way to change, and you'll start seeing faculty accept the use of that a little bit more. But also, I mean, what about, how are people in your colleges, how are you handling things like labs? Or are you still allowing people that need labs to come in? What about, we still have half the semester left for those that are on the semester system. That's huge as to what, how they're going to continue that research and that type of work. Anyone?
All right, I'll chime in again, and for us, that's where
we invited you, Raul.
That's where that reasonable approach comes into play. We have not absolutely closed our campus. We have told people that where at all possible, use online teaching, and in certain scenarios where things like labs come into play, it may be necessary that students come into the lab, and we will, in scenarios such as those, practice social distancing and make sure that if you are sick, stay home. We will find alternative methods of teaching you. We will provide you with makeup scenarios in the future. We are fortunate enough that right now we are in our finals. We are spring break next week. All our finals, to the best of our abilities, are being held online. Some faculty have simply canceled the finals and told students that their previous grade is their final grade, or they have offered students the option to choose their existing grade as their final grade or to do a final instead. But when the term resumes in a few weeks, short of new guidance from our leadership and from the government, in specific scenarios, labs will be held in person with all the necessary precautions.
Right. So are we, any of us, prepared should it be a full shutdown and no one can come on? Are we at the point where are we still playing chicken with our head cut off, or are we ready if it were to completely change? And are there plans for that? And are we being asked to provide technologies to be able to help those ones that maybe are not, maybe some of the labs are thought, okay, I'll just cancel it because this is short. Well, maybe this isn't so short. Maybe you don't, the national state of emergency if it's going to be over soon.
Yeah. I mean, last night we received an email from our EVP saying that the campus, everybody should be ready to work from home tomorrow, by which I mean Tuesday, if not today, and with the exception of quote unquote essential employees, which in this case currently still includes the AV office and the IT team. That being said, I think that a lot of faculty more than staff are probably more ready than they think to work from home. I think a lot just from the nature of being faculty, apart from research faculty, particularly those working in labs. And there are carve-outs obviously from that. But we're now, I think we are more ready than we thought we were.
I'd say, yeah, we were pretty ready, I think. But when you start talking about labs and students being able to perform lab work, I mean, we've spent a lot of time designing labs for distance learning, and it is not that's not a 3-day process. You've got to determine what sorts of things need to be presented and how. I think if we have to stop students from coming to labs or utilizing some of the on-campus resources, like our campus is remaining open just with no face-to-face classes. I saw somebody in chat mentioning that very thing. I think if we had to push all labs to online, it would be very difficult right now.
Yeah. And then what about things like for our medical school? I know, which maybe is something that we can, you know, it kind of goes full circle. And I don't know if Gabe, you can talk to it. There are certain, you know, we have HIPAA regulations that we have to pay attention. I know Zoom has a special license available to cover that, but what are some of these ways that we can use these tools that we're putting in other classrooms and be able to use it for the specialty rooms or specialty cases like lab? That are there other things and best practices?
There's always best practices being created. A lot of the times we don't have all the information available. We try to think of things before they come to us. But a lot of the times, what's the saying, you know, necessity is the mother of all invention, or whatever the saying is. A lot of the times the customers come to us. When you guys come to us and you say, we need this or we want this, we'll start working on it, or we'll start looking into it more and try to figure out a best way. Do I know of one off the top of my head? No, I'm not going to say here and lie to you and say that I do know of one. I don't. But that doesn't mean that it can't be created. That doesn't mean that it can't be, it's not something that it won't be, you know, worked on, that they won't dedicate resources to it. If enough people ask for it, and it sounds like there's going to be enough people on this, you know, conference alone, yeah, it's something that people will work on. So yeah, we are always looking to improve everything that is offered to everyone. We want it to be as good as it's going to be, knowing very well that things are going to change at a breakneck pace. That's just the nature of technology. So we want to continuously get better. Absolutely. I know that didn't really answer your question, but that's the best answer I got right now.
But you know what? Sometimes that's all we've got, right? And it's just knowing, you know, hey, we're continually being faced with circumstances that we didn't expect. You know, I know that we're going to all have our I told you so's, but on the other hand, did we really have solutions until asked to come up with the solutions, right? And forced to have the solution. So I think that's actually a perfectly valid response, because it's exactly what we're all going through, and we're all going through right now. I know as we've come to an hour and a half in this, we want to be able to open up to questions too. So anyone who has any specific questions, attendees, if you want to raise your hand, we can play radio DJ and bring you on. If there's anything specific for Gabe or Raul or any of us, we would love to kind of just see. I know that the chat's been going off, so this is great. If there are any things that we haven't thought about. I mean, I had my little list of notes, but I want to make sure that we can provide answers or whatever, or if anyone has any good best practices that you've found, we would love to be able to see that. Little things we found, for example, sure, you had webinar licenses, right? Above and beyond your standard Zoom room licenses for your really large lectures. Things like that we don't necessarily think about until, you know, all of a sudden, you know, someone says, well, what am I going to do for 700 people? You know, those are things we're all learning on. So if anyone has any questions, do in there, and we'd be happy to. Anything else from our panelists? Any other takeaways that we've been learning?
I wanted to add to something that was said earlier about classroom builds and opportunities here to do some classroom builds. This is simply, I think, I'd argue, parroting what others have said already, but in terms of enabling essentially web conferencing in a classroom, it's easy for someone to go in and use the computer as already there, or bring their laptop and fire up Zoom and use that to host a Zoom meeting. But it does not necessarily produce the best experience, especially when a room may already have cameras and microphones and so forth. And so we are, in fact, using this as an opportunity to add that kind of web conferencing to a classroom, essentially a single USB port in a classroom, a cable, you plug that into your computer, or maybe that's already patched into the computer in the classroom, leverages the cameras and the microphones already in the room, and turns that room into a Zoom capable classroom, or alternatively into a lecture capture classroom. It is essentially the same concept, the same technology. We have a few of these already, and as we start refreshing our classrooms, many of you know Oregon State University does a lot of their own builds, so we have the luxury of doing our own designs. So as we refresh our classrooms or as new buildings go up, we are putting this essentially as part of our standard build. You walk into a classroom, plug that USB into your computer. Now the camera that's at the back of the room or the front of the room, or the document camera, or the microphones that are over your head, all become part of your virtual scenario, so that right down to the point where, yes, your instructor is the director, but essentially whatever shows up on the projector in the room is what's getting recorded. So they don't need to overthink it. They don't need to think, what's somebody else online seeing right now? What's being recorded right now? It's whatever is showing up on the projector. You switch to a document cam, that gets recorded. You switch to your screen, that gets recorded. And so it sounds like a lot of other people are doing the same thing. And it is, in this case, very much an opportunity to add what really is not a very spendy solution to your classroom.
Yep, absolutely. It's one thing we recognize. You can throw the little Hudley IQ and send it backwards through an NVX unit right up into your computer or your UC, Zoom UC engine or along those lines, give you those opportunities to add at a very inexpensive amount a camera to a room to now add that added feature. Of course, we're going to all be doing this in volume very, very quickly. But oh, look at that. We're doing an ad for USB.
Mark mentioned this in the chat, or I see Chris Decker said it as well. This is a Magewell HDMI to USB. Essentially comes out of our Crestron DMPS. So a single feed HDMI out of a Crestron DMPS turns HDMI into USB. Then you run that USB into a laptop. And so every source that goes into the projector is what becomes a source in your Zoom or your lecture capture.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that, and those are easy to get. It actually opens up. Chris Netto asked a question here. Do you have any minimum requirements that you're asking from the participants to participate? And that's one area that we've left off. We've been talking about from our classrooms and our helping our faculty. What about the students on the other end? Are there requirements, or are we the ones that are helping provide that in order to ensure that they're like, obviously we already talked about, we don't always have everybody have laptops. So we're trying to figure out how to get that. We talked about getting earbuds for people, but then realized, well, I mean, does that, if they come out, then you have still another health risk. Anyone there? How you set up any of those lines, or anyone else in the chat have anything to say to those? So for us, it was just, it's so funny because I don't think we've really talked about it except for people who say who brought it up that they don't. I also wonder with this generation, they probably have earbuds and all of that stuff. But I think for us, it's been a laptop along with some type of microphone headset. That's been our need. It'd be interesting. I don't know that what else would be needed on the other end, but everyone's hitting Amazon.
So far, the only request we've been getting from our students is to keep the content bandwidth friendly. Apparently, we had several reports that of students having some issues with some of the file sizes and some of the, I guess, HD streaming that faculty members were trying to do. So we're coaching them down now to kind of keep things, very bandwidth friendly, especially since a lot of these students have migrated home and they don't have that same robust enterprise network they did once they were on campus.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, so yeah, Chris is saying that network and bandwidth. Well, it leads up a huge issue, right? Because we can't guarantee the band people. And can you? And it goes to the equity issue, right? I mean, can you make somebody go and use high speed? What you would think that, I mean, to me, most of our generation is already YouTubing things, but you're right. In the middle of Donovan was talking about, in some places, Jim, you had to make our call the other night because you knew you were going into areas where, you may not have service. What can be done if a class is being, is done synchronously that somebody can meet? So are we having those conversations? Maybe that's for them.
That's been an issue here for years, and for our synchronous distance learning system, that's why we essentially have a private statewide network, which is huge. I mean, that is a huge task to do that, but we have 600 and some classrooms connected over what's essentially a private network, a very, very high availability network. So obviously we can't do that if the students are sitting at home, and we have to hope that at least for a while, a student who has to is going to be able to go to one of our remote centers and sit in a conference room or something there and make use of the network. But yeah, huge deal. That last mile is a massive, massive deal for us.
And I think for us, it's managing the bandwidth that's going. And, I guess being in LA, we don't think about it because it seems to have been okay. But, yeah, I can see that being huge, disadvantage, especially, that it's going to happen for already or, who are already needing the extra. So it's definitely going to be something that we all think about. And maybe that's why we need to not do synchronous as much and start thinking of synchronous as we move on, or using the synchronous, in coordination with group studies and all of that, because, we have to still ensure that we have equal opportunity to learn for every student. So that's a huge point. And a couple other people had put on the chat, frame rate is huge, video resolution. Are you presetting that? I mean, some of the people who are on the chat, are these things that we're, or, if you load stuff up to YouTube, it can be scaled as it comes down to the user. What are we seeing? We're seeing crickets.
Well, I can say on my end right now, in fact, Joe, you're starting to break up a lot, the audio and the quality, but I don't know if it's on my end or...
It's probably me. But see, as I said, that we don't have a network in LA, it's going to break. That's how it works, right?
I understood that in the, I think it was in the Orange County area, but AT&T had some issues a couple of times last week. Yeah, and that's come up in the chat that everyone's going to be connecting from home. There are weak links in the chain all along. Are we talking about VPN access to your campus? What are the license caps? Are we talking about just upstream access from your home to the backbones? Or even our cloud providers like Zoom and Canvas and Kelter and Panopto and all the others, they all have done their due diligence and they're working to increase that capacity. But dude, we are all moving online. It's like, can we really keep up?
Yep. No, absolutely. And I would say is when we did our first day and we had 18,000 Zoom, I'm just assuming you all can hear me, Zoom calls simultaneously, we thought, wow, this is crazy. And it handled it very, very well. But that also was because everybody was inside campus. Now they've separated. Oh, I just saw my computer say I went out and now I'm back. So now everybody is separating. Will you still be able to have that level of, of quality? I don't know. Anyway.
I do think Mark made a point earlier up on the chat here, and I think it's a good point to reiterate is, one thing to think about is how important is the talking head, right? There's the old adage that audio without video is a conference, and video without audio is just surveillance, and that's it, right? So, it's we want to make sure first and foremost that your audio is good. And so, when we went out to buy a bunch of bit parts, for our staff to potentially use, we bought twice as many headsets as we bought webcams because, we just want to make sure that the audio is very good. Audio with content is a great place to start if you need to, and instead of talking head necessarily.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to throw to somebody because I'm going to switch my mic here, and I'm hosting the web, so we're going to see what happens. So you all can continue the conversation.
This is the one time I have nothing more to contribute. Something that keeps coming up is that this is not the right time to be introducing new technologies. This is not the right time to be throwing everybody a curveball. The fact is simply that a lot of our faculties are already new to Zoom. A lot of our faculty are already new to Canvas. That's enough. Let's not be looking at response videos or self-evaluating products, especially when some of these new tools may require additional licensing, additional costs, additional expenses for students who don't really need to be dealing with the fact that they now have to go someplace and register for a product and enter a credit card number. Let's stick with what we have. Let's spin up the bare minimum. It might mean you have to introduce a single new product or two new products where before you had none. But look at things very broadly and realize that everyone's already in a state of somewhat chaos. Let's not introduce new chaos to it.
Absolutely.
Again, I think that brings up the question that someone online, or maybe it was Josh, asked earlier. Who's the one who's doing this? Who's analyzing the data? Who's making this decisions as to what is business critical, what is not? What's important, what is not? Obviously, you guys know, you guys are in higher ed, you work in it all the time, and you know what exactly they need, but you don't want to overwhelm neither the faculty nor the students. But what are you going to do? Like, is it your job to actually make that decision, or is it someone else's job? And how are you going to ensure that? Like, what's the best way to proceed? Okay, let's say for the purpose of distance learning, obviously a video conferencing solution, for the sake, because I'm wearing the shirt, Zoom is important. But you go with a different one or another one. What else do you need aside from Zoom? On the university side, you need the LMS. But from the student side, aside from a good set of headsets, which most people have some sort of a headset, whether it's their iPhone, AirPods, or something, or whatever, most people have something. They may not be professional quality conferencing headset, but does it need to be? I don't think it does. What are the key? What's key? What's important? What do they need? Aside from the internet, like Chris said. But yeah.
Yeah, well, but that actually brings up the whole point, right? Because, and I'm assuming you all can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Because I just went right into the laptop. But I think that brings up the exact point. What do they need? If we're sitting here talking about trying to do best practices for taking our education outside of our campus, and yet I'm having random issues that aren't, I don't know where that's happening from. I guess it was my soundboard. But the point is, what about our students who don't have that acumen, right? How is it, what is it that they need and what we need to be even provide? I mean, that's where, to me, I'm thinking, okay, we need to be on hold and for all of those needs, because who knows what it's going to be, right? I mean, and we're the ones who are supposed to handle that.
This is where we need that, somebody mentioned earlier, we need the help desk that transitions from sending students to classrooms to help with equipment. That help desk needs to be there to jump on a Zoom conference with you and help you solve your audio and video problems. So we have this, I mean, we have this obviously for our distance learning, our synchronous distance learning video conferencing system. It needs to be available for students at home trying to view content and participate in online lectures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I love that, just as Mark said, build your systems around, you know, how they're self-training. I mean, can you simplify? And maybe that's why that's why Zoom has taken off, right? We all recognize that it's easy. And that's one of the things we've been talking about for years is, why did Zoom become popular? Because it just works, right? And maybe that's kind of the things that we need to be doing, is talking about how we can build in systems that don't need us, so that, going back to what Don was saying, that we are essentially just strategic partners and not necessarily maintainers. So what I would like to do as we kind of close out, unless anyone has a comment on that, is let's kind of go around the horn and just give some last thoughts, last ideas of what, kind of where we're going to go from here, what you're thinking about over the next few weeks. What is our game plan? I know a lot of this is up in the air. We don't know these things, but just give us those final thoughts. I'll start with you, Jim. Come back to you. Kind of.
Just if you're looking at some of the comments in chat, I think one thing we're going to have to think about, even though it seems like completely outside the realm of what we're worried about right now, we're going to have to evaluate how well the stuff we're doing is working. What are the impacts to teaching and learning? What's happening with the way the pedagogy needs to be modified, changed. This is a very fast change for a lot of people, and make sure that the outcomes can be measured somehow or other. Because if there's a pressure to do this a lot going forward, we need to, and people say, best practices, not worried about it right now, but we're going to need to be worried about it. Think now about how we're going to gather that data and use it on the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, it goes right back to the data and the being able to understand when we get through this. What does that mean? Because we are going to have a new normal. And wow, okay, so Mike just put in the chat, so that's good. So President Trump recommends not meeting in groups larger than 10 and avoiding restaurants and bars. I mean, so that's right up from the highest level. I mean, what does that mean now? And is there a time frame on that? So I think
it's 15 days initially.
15 days?
The timeline that they're giving.
Okay, so that's almost as close to, a full quarantine as you can get. Yeah, Grubhub and Uber Eats, no kidding.
And also along with that, think about the economic impacts for your maybe your students who aren't as well to do. I mean, how's this going to affect them? Those who are maybe working as waiters and waitresses trying to put themselves through school. That's all. It's a huge issue that, I mean, it's not our part to address it, but we need to be worried about it, I think, for our students' sake.
Again, comes back to equity, right? We need to be, in everything we're doing, we need to be thinking about, in the back of our minds, is this decision going to be equitable? And if not, how can we make it equitable? So.
Absolutely. I love that. Is that your final thought? Do you have to add more? Do you want more?
No, that gave me my final thought. I don't have much more. I mean, I think it'll be very interesting to continue to watch and see how this goes. I'm looking forward to lots of lessons learned out of this. I think one of the things that I think will be a takeaway from our campus is I think a lot of the things that were occurring on campus were very distributed to different groups. And I think that we've done a tremendously great job of getting people together, and collaborating. I think there'll still be some interesting questions at the end. How can we be working more closely together after the fact, as a part of all this? So.
Absolutely. I see Donovan, you're on, but you're not video. So I don't know if you can have a chat, if you can talk, or if you're just listening. But if you have a final thought, do jump in. And if not, we will go right to Gabe, your final thoughts.
I think my final thoughts, being that I'm kind of the outsider here for this higher ed council, is there's so much going on, and I think a lot of decisions were made. And just, I guess my questions were more on the outset of what can we do differently in the future? God forbid there's another crisis. I mean, we always hope that there's not, but something always seems to come up. And most of us here were around during 9/11 and everything that happened afterward, the financial crisis of 2008. What can we do to help go forward? And just for myself, I'm going to throw out a few links in chat just so that people can look, because it seems like a lot of people don't know of all the tools that they can avail themselves in regards to Zoom, whether you're a Zoom user or not, but just so that you can know everything that's out there. Because we do try to just help everyone as much as possible. And I mean, and that's it. It's like, what can we do? Get the information out there. Joe, thank you for putting this together along with BC and all the other guys, and making it available for everyone, and letting them know that they have resources out there and that there are people that are going through exactly what they're going through. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us, Gabe. And Raul, your final thoughts.
I think I need to tell everyone, don't panic.
Mm-hmm.
You know this, you've got this. Have confidence in your ability, have confidence in the ability of your coworkers. You're focusing on tools that you have been using for years, even though other people haven't. You are dealing with people who right now are very anxious and very nervous. So it's going to be your job to make them feel relaxed and comfortable with the tools. Be gentle with them. Understand that they don't necessarily know the tools the way you do, but you're going to help them become professionals in those tools. You're going to guide them through solutions that is going to help them teach their class or learn in a class in a way they frankly probably haven't before. So you're helping them blaze a new path, but you can do this. So trust in yourself.
Absolutely. I love that. Because you're right. This is what we do. It's a way of doing things, but we are the experts. And this is exactly what we need to trust everything that we've been doing, and just be that. As we got a couple of quick comments. It was, to be a leader, be good leaders, stay positive and AV on. I love that, Greg. Those are the types of things. This is now our moment to step up and show that we are the experts that we've been claiming we are. No, but really, we have an opportunity to step up and show that to others. So BC, here we are again, closing up another HETMA thing. Probably not in the way we wanted to, huh? I mean, your thoughts?
So my final thoughts, I guess, are Joe. First of all, I can't take any credit for getting this put together whatsoever. I was running like crazy last week. This is all Joe's baby, so thank you for getting this set up. But I think, as you can hear, everything, ambulances are still working in town. I think the big thing, kind of like what Joe and everybody else was talking about, this is those years of us building that credibility up, that we know what we're talking about, that we can kind of have a little bit of a finger on the pulse of what the future looks like. I think this is when it's starting to pay off, and that credibility is really coming in handy right now. So biggest thing I still on our end though is to remain flexible. We'll write a plan, and then 1 hour later we're ripping it up and writing a new one. So I think right now everybody's handling themselves as best as they possibly can under unprecedented circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I almost want to steal that for my final thought, but I won't. So Tim just asked for the link to the CCUMC webinar. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know that it's gone out. I wanted to. I was just looking through my emails. So if Dawn, you happen to have it and want to put it there, we can. I think this is going to be an important conversation. Again, to just continue. It is tomorrow. Yeah, it's not on the listserv yet, but I know it is tomorrow at a certain time. Thank you, Dawn. There you go. And that way we can continue this conversation. I do encourage us, all of our groups, we need to come together. This is my final thought. Let's just remember why we do this, right? We could be in AV in so many different verticals, in so many different ways, and yet we choose to do it in higher ed. that means we have a responsibility for the safety and lives of our students. And it all begins and ends there. The technology is just the tools we're using. And so that's where I think that we, if we keep in mind those who we're here to serve, we're all going to come out ahead. And no matter what choices we make, that's what our institutions are going to remember from us. And Mike asked what time tomorrow. I believe it's at 9:30 Pacific. And BC, you wanted to say something really quick, it looked like.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know some stuff I've been reading online. If you guys have any positions open right now, please reach out to the folks that work in live production and events, because they're taking a beating right now. So any leads that you guys have will definitely be welcome on their end.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot of people who are hurting in this. Yeah. So Don just put 11 a.m. Central Time. So, so 9 a.m. Pacific. That would be noon Eastern. Hopefully we can send that out, and I'll tweet this out and send it throughout for everybody as well. So thank you all. Hopefully this was helpful. And we're just having the conversation. We are not going to pretend to have all the answers, but we definitely have a lot of questions, and I just love seeing our family come together. I want to give one more shout out. Hopefully, James, you're still on here. And if you are, could you put your email in the chat for everybody? Get ready to get bombarded. He has started a Slack group solely for us in higher ed and higher ed AV and IT. Maybe we could continue the conversation as well there, and even just have, maybe if we have a continued talk on this, it would be great. So I encourage you all, let's all use all of our resources and all of our groups together and pull this through. So thank you all. And I'm gonna not hit end meeting so you all can see his email really quick, and we'll see you next time around. Obviously, we'll keep holding this. I was gonna promote some HETMA things that we're doing at InfoComm, but we don't even want to get into what's gonna happen to InfoComm things. So we're just gonna leave it at we're doing this, and we'll see everyone at CCUMCs next time. So cheers all. Woot, woot.